What do you do when someone is questioning your professional judgment? This is a question that was posed to me, and I can't wait to dive into this topic. There's a lot of nuances to this particular difficulty in the professional world, and I have a lot of thoughts that I'd like to share on how to go about addressing this issue in a way that wins for everyone and that lifts you up in other people's eyes instead of potentially creating conflict. Now, when it comes to your professional opinion, of course, you know that you are educated on what this topic is. You might be highly educated on whatever your field is. But that doesn't keep other people from questioning your judgment. And I think that in some ways, this can be healthy. A few generations ago, it was expected that if a person was the professional in that area, that they knew everything, that it was unquestionable, and that their advice was to be followed without giving it a second thought. And over the years, it has kind of come to light that this may not be the best option. Thus, the second opinion, right? So just because someone is a professional nowadays does not necessarily mean that we're just going to take their word as law or as the golden standard. And I think that one of the things that can help us to keep from feeling so prickly when this topic comes up is to understand that it's reasonable for other people to want to better understand our thought process. So the more that a person can get to understand the reason in your mind behind the decisions that you're making or behind the recommendations that you're making, the more they can trust that what you're saying or what you're recommending truly is best. And when this comes down to people that you work with, such as colleagues or administrators, the better you can explain your thought process to them, the more they will inherently come to trust your judgment, which should result in fewer instances of your judgment being questioned if you're consistently able to present a logical, reasonable explanation as to why you decided one thing or another. Something else to keep in mind is that we, as the trained professionals, are picking up on so much more than what the average person would, who's not necessarily trained in that specific profession. And it can seem as though we're not being thorough or that we didn't really take a look at all the facts if we're performing our job efficiently. So in my day job, I'm a physical therapist and I work in home health. The vast majority of the patients that I see are elderly, medically complicated, and being referred to therapy because of weakness and or falls. So a lot of what I'm assessing when I'm going into a person's home for the first time is their fall risk and what exactly is contributing to that fall risk. Do I feel that it's primarily an issue with weakness or balance, or maybe a vestibular problem, which would be an inner ear problem? And even though it may not seem like a lot, when that patient comes to the door to answer the door, "Hi, I'm Julie, I'm here to see you for your therapy evaluation," they may turn around, which takes more balance and coordination than you might realize. They have to turn around and then walk a certain distance from the door back to their seated surface on the couch or the dining room table or whatever. So they have to navigate that space and then they have to turn around again and sit. To most people, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It may seem like the evaluation hasn't even started yet. But in my mind, what I'm looking at is already telling me so much information. How safely did they turn around? What assistive device, if any, are they using? Are they using a walker or a cane or nothing? Are there any other things that are standing out a lot to me, like a really obvious limp or certain physical things that may indicate that they've had a stroke in the past? How safely did they turn around and sit down in their seat? Did they nearly miss it? Did it take them quite a while to square up to that chair before they felt safe sitting down? There's a lot that I'm observing when to most people it just seems like I'm coming in the room and I haven't even done anything yet. So sometimes in my mind, I'm checking all kinds of boxes and I'm observing so many things, and I'm already 10 steps ahead of the conversation that we haven't even started yet. I've already noticed, well, they're having this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem, and I haven't even asked them how their day was yet. But to an outside eye, that might not look like I'm doing anything. So I have to understand that just because it makes sense to me and just because it's my area of expertise, it doesn't mean that other people can read my mind and that they know what I know or that they understand what I've already observed and seen. So it's my job to educate them. So let's go over a few different scenarios where this questioning might come up and how I would suggest you go about it. We've already kind of covered this idea. First of all, you need to have a clear idea in your mind of the decisions that you're making and why. Surely you're not just making arbitrary decisions for no reason, but you still have to be able to clearly communicate those things to another person. So make sure you're clear in your own mind about the decisions you're making and why. The second thing is to make sure that you understand that it's within your responsibilities to educate the people around you about what you're deciding and why, so that they can trust you and they can buy in to whatever it is that you're telling them that you think is best. So making sure that you're educating the people around you about your decision making and why will go a long way. And the last thing is possibly being willing to compromise or be open to alternate suggestions if your original professional opinion or suggestions are not well received. And that last one is what we're going to really focus on, when your professional suggestions are not very well received. Now, this could be, especially in my instance, it could be an administrator who's trying to understand why I chose to not pick a patient up for therapy, or why I chose to give them a certain frequency versus another one. This could be a colleague of mine who doesn't understand, again, why didn't you pick this person up for therapy? I called in a referral and then you didn't pick them up for therapy. Why not? Or it could be a patient who strongly disagrees with my recommendation when it comes to their therapy. So let's go over each of those in turn quickly. If this is an administrator, you do have to understand that this administrator is looking at things from a larger business perspective. They're looking at the numbers, they're looking at the revenue, they're looking at client or patient satisfaction, any sort of feedback they're getting from the customers that are being served by the organization. If there are certain actions that are more likely to cause a complaint, they are trying to stay ahead of that by staying in the know. They want to understand, why did you make this certain decision that I know might come back to bite us later, so that if somebody makes a call, I know what to tell them. One of the frustrations that can happen in the office sometimes, because I'm working out in the field, but there's a whole other group of people in the office who are receiving phone calls from the patients, is that a patient may call in to complain, why did this happen or why did that happen? And the people in the office are like, I don't know why it happened. I didn't even know that happened. And I don't know what to tell this very angry person. So keeping them in the loop as to what you're deciding and why will help better prepare them for those potentially tricky conversations down the road. In the last job where I worked, I would on occasion get a phone call from the regional rehab director asking me about certain decisions that I'd made to keep a patient or not keep a patient after a certain period of time. And I was always ready to explain, well, they've met these goals or they haven't, or we've been working on this for a while, but they're not getting any better. And at this point, I feel like they've kind of reached a plateau with their progress, and I don't really feel that we're providing any further benefit to them. And every once in a while, he might say, well, we've been looking at things, and I'm just wondering if you feel that this patient could potentially benefit from a maintenance program. Now, not trying to get too technical about physical therapy, but usually physical therapy is thought of as being a restorative service because the vast majority of the time it is a restorative service. We're trying to get someone better. In home health, and when you're dealing with people who are close to transitioning to hospice, it is perfectly appropriate and approved by Medicare and all the payers to put certain patients who meet certain criteria on a maintenance program. And the purpose of this program is to prevent rapid decline for certain patients who are at very high risk of this. So if we have a patient that every time we discharge them, they end up right back in the hospital, they would be deemed appropriate for this maintenance program because we've been able to show that it makes a big difference, right? I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but he might ask me, because my plan was to discharge them because I felt that there was no further progress being made. And he might ask me, do you feel that this patient could benefit from a maintenance program? And it's my job to consider that. Do I or don't I? Could I see a benefit of that? Or do I really truly feel that that's not appropriate? And most of the time, if he was asking me this, it was because he'd been going through the chart and felt that it might be appropriate. And most of the time I could say yes. If you will approve them to be on a maintenance program, I can see a benefit in doing that. And I'd be happy to set that up, change my paperwork around, do whatever we need to do to get that started. And he'd say, okay, thanks, and we'd move on. Every once in a while, there was someone that I had a specific reason why I did not feel that that was an appropriate option. Maybe they were very hard to get a hold of. And so we were having a lot of missed visits anyway. Maybe I had further insight into that patient that I truly felt that that was not appropriate. But because I was always willing to have the conversation and I was always willing to be open to other options if necessary, on those occasions when I really put my foot down and said, no, I don't think this is appropriate, I didn't get any pushback from it because we had that kind of relationship where he trusted me and he trusted my judgment. He trusted that I was going to do what was best for the patient. And he also trusted that whenever possible, if he was making a request of me, I would truly give it my honest thought and true weight of whether or not it was appropriate, and try to accommodate his requests anytime I felt that it was appropriate to do so. So there's one example. Another example might be a colleague who is not quite understanding your decision. So I had a patient, this was a couple of years ago, who, I'm not going to get into all of it, but let's just say she was really good at talking up a big game. She was really good at making it sound like she was willing to work hard to get better, but her actions were consistently the opposite. This patient was bedbound in a hospital bed in her living room, and there were some psych issues involved. And when the nurses would come around, the nurses would kind of, come on, you need to get up, you need to do this, you need to do that. And if it was the nurse saying this, the patient was really good at saying, oh yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. I'm all for it. Call in therapy. I'll do therapy. I'll do whatever you want. I'm willing to work hard. I want to get out of this bed. And she would really put on a good show for the nurses. But then when therapy would come by, it was always, I'm hurting too bad. I can't move. No, I can't tolerate it. You're just going to have to go. We can sit here and talk and we can do a few leg kicks in the bed, but I'm not even going to sit on the side of the bed. She would not even attempt to sit on the side of the bed. I'd gone round and round with her multiple times, and it was always the same result. And I mean over a period of 6 months or more. And it was always the same result. And so I had to really put my foot down with the nurses and explain to them what was going on. It wasn't their fault. They wanted her to get better, and she was talking up a really good big game. She snowed me over on it the first time I had gone to see her. I totally believed her. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, we're going to get her out of this bed. We're going to get her up. You know, we're going to change her life, right? And but the proof was never there after several months of therapy. So I had to really put my foot down with the nurses. And of course, sometimes we would get new nurses and she would give them this whole thing. And then they would try to put in a therapy evaluation. And I would say, absolutely not. I am not willing to take another therapy evaluation on her because of this. And I had already set up a very specific protocol that she had to be up in her wheelchair a certain number of days a week, I had this whole thing that I said, if she will do this, I am more than happy to come out and do another evaluation so that we can take her the next step. But the therapy that we were doing with her is not skilled care. It is not appropriate. It is not giving her any functional gains. It's not making any true difference in her ability to be more mobile throughout the day. And she's been very non-compliant with our plan of care. So until she does this, and this 6 days a week, and you can verify with her family that she's been doing this, and this 6 days a week, I will not take any other therapy evaluations on her. I won't do it. I made it very clear to the administration. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. It's a waste of the company's money. This is not like, I'm not doing this again. And every time the nurses would put it back to her and, oh, well, never mind, I'm not doing that. And this, but if I could not explain clearly why, it could have made me look really bad to these newer nurses who didn't know me very well and who were hearing this really great story from the patient. And it could make me look bad that I was refusing to take an evaluation on this bedbound patient. So it's important that you understand that you have to be able to explain your thought process and, in my case, giving some specific parameters. If you can do this, and this, I am more than happy to come back and help you go to the next level. But until you're doing these things, there is nothing that I can do that would be considered skilled care. It is not skilled care for me to put you in a lift and lift you out of your hospital bed into your power chair. That is not you have family and paid caregivers who know how to do that. So it is not a skilled service because they are already able to do it for you. So I can't, right? But I had to be very clear about why. Okay, we're gonna stop there for now for this week. We've already gone over how to handle an issue with an administrator or someone higher up on the ladder than you who's trying to ask questions about your decision making. And we've gone over a colleague and maybe communicating with a colleague about why you're making a certain decision and what those parameters might be around you changing your mind or being willing to do something that up to this point you don't feel is appropriate. We still have one more area to go over, which is when a patient or client or customer is unhappy with your decision and how you might handle that. But we're going to save that conversation for next week. So I hope that you will stay tuned and come back next week to hear the last part of this topic. And once that video is out, there will be a link below. So if that video is already out, you will find a link to it under the description for this video. If you have any other topics that you would like for me to discuss, further clarification about this topic, anything in your personal or professional life that are coming up for you that are feeling frustrating or difficult or just hard to navigate, remember, I am your conversation expert, Julie, and I'm here for you. So let me know what those topics are so I can make the content that you need. I'll see you next week for part 2 in this video series.